We're going to go ahead and just jump right in. And by right in, I mean all the way in. And by all the way in, I mean maybe a little bit in over my head. Does anybody else feel like this sometimes? Like when you open your ticketing queue or your roadmap or your Kanban board or whatever it is that you use to manage the work in progress and the promised work for your team, that you really just cannot get your head above water. Maybe it feels like you can't see land, or worse, like you can see land, but you can't muster the strength to actually swim towards it anymore. My name is Kristin Smith. I'm a team lead on a software delivery team in a distributed company that serves the outdoor hospitality industry. My team focuses on cloud engineering, scalability and observability, and developer experience. And on most days, that already feels like a pretty broad mandate. So over the last 6 months, it's become really, really clear to me that we have to be extra judicious about which projects we keep on deck. Waterlogged projects have to get thrown overboard or our entire ship is going to sink. So today we're going to talk a little bit about sunk cost and how it affects your projects and how recognizing that can help you be a better lead. We're going to do a little bit of island hopping. So we'll start over here. We'll get on the same page about what the sunk cost fallacy is and why it's important to recognize. We're going to rendezvous at this lookout point and talk about what our role as team leads or tech leads is in making the decision to abandon projects. And then my favorite part is we get to do a shipwreck tour of some projects that I've been involved with that have been abandoned or thrown overboard. Lastly, we're going to refocus on our people because that is the biggest part of our jobs as leads. And along the way, we're going to talk about 5 things that I think are super important to keep in mind to mitigate the impact on your team of abandoning projects. We are decidedly not going to go over to this part of the cove today. So if you are coming in with a strong business background or a strong project management background, you'll notice that the frameworks that you might use to help you make these decisions are going to be almost completely glossed over. So we'll get that out of the way up front. Those are more adeptly handled in different talks by different people, but this is really geared at folks who are in sort of early levels of technical leadership or who are aspiring to get there and what we can learn about it from our experiences. So what is the sunk cost fallacy? I put words on a screen, so we'll do these first. The sunk cost fallacy means that we are making irrational decisions because we are factoring in influences other than the current alternatives. Usually, we talk about sunk cost fallacy in the very simple sentence that people finish what they start because they've invested time, energy, or money, even if it's no longer a good idea. But I like this because it really focuses on the fact that we are always in control of being able to reassess what the current alternatives are. For example, you're a tech lead, your team is starting a project, things are hopefully looking more like this. It's bright and sunny, you understand the path to value that the project brings to the business, you've maybe done a proof of concept or a research spike to kind of guide the technical boundaries of the project. Everything is going to go great, right? Except that all forecasts are guesses. And along the way, your sailboat can get hit by any number of icebergs. Some of these are sure project management things, whatever, but a lot of them are external and you don't have as much control over them. So changes in the competitive landscape, really serious personnel turnover could impact a project or the quality of the project you're able to deliver. There might be a change in appetites at the business level for what types of risk are acceptable or what types of costs are acceptable, and you're not involved in those decisions. So all of these external factors can come in and affect our projects. And it doesn't mean that we've done anything wrong. It just means that our current set of alternatives is now different than it was when we started the project. So when do we decide to abandon? I'm hoping that we're all working in functional teams that might look really different for everybody, but it probably means that you get to make this decision in concert with other people who have different types of experience and different perspectives. So people from the business side might come in and they have more understanding of things that have shifted in the competitive environment. Maybe a new competitor came on the market, a new product came out, an economic downturn has shifted the way that consumers are spending. Whatever it is that's sort of impacting those business drivers for your team, you might not be intimately aware of, but hopefully somebody on the business side is. Same thing with product and project managers. They're going to come in with different perspectives. A project manager might have more information about the projected costs and revenue for a project. But what we get to bring is things like, we understand the technical implications of abandoning one project over another. Maybe it looks like from the business side that two projects are equally able to be cut, and you know that one of them is a standalone and the other one provides the basis for all sorts of future enhancements in the future, or that cutting that project severely impacts the stability of your system. So understanding the technical layout that you're working in and being able to bring that perspective to these cut or keep decisions is a key part of our role as leads, and we get to own that. Frameworks that have been helpful for me as I've started to move into this. Kelly Sutton has a really fantastic article on why finish technical migrations. These are projects that often get stuck. And he makes a really strong case for you either finish the migration, or if things have shifted to the point that that migration is no longer valuable, you got to roll it back. Don't stay stuck in the middle. But it's okay to admit that it's no longer valuable. And then engineering costs and personnel impacts, and that could be recognizing a skills gap on your team, understanding impacts on morale, these things that as you're working really closely with the people who are maybe actually doing a lot more of the hands-on coding. All three of these frameworks are things that we get to bring to the table when we talk to business and product. Also keeping in mind, if you sense that a project is not providing path to value and is sunk, it is your responsibility to bring that to the table as quickly as you can. Boredom, frustration, and futility are key drivers in losing people off your team. Which leads me to my favorite part. Once you've decided to abandon a project, which I think you 100% should stand behind, there are a couple of key things to ending it well. So first one, notify the Coast Guard. If you've decided to abandon a project, tell absolutely everybody who needs to know. You don't have to scream it from the rooftops, but it's way better to perhaps over notify people that something has been officially canceled than to have people wonder what on earth ever happened to that project. I don't want to hear, oh, I think somebody was working on that. I don't know what happened to it. I want people to know without a doubt that a clear, conscious decision was made to end a project and nobody on my team dropped a ball. They just moved on to other priorities. The second part is filling the lifeboat. This is the lifeboat. So excellent quote from me. When you're filling your lifeboat, you want to salvage what you can and drop absolutely everything else. What do I mean by this? If you're dropping a technical project, there are almost certainly bits and pieces of that that are useful in future projects or in second iterations of the same project. And you want to make sure that that is excised out of that project, kept with as much context as you possibly can. And then all of the detritus needs to just drop, sink that. A couple of shipwrecks that I've been involved with, for examples. Number one, a I worked at a company where there was, at the time, not a lot of appetite for buying SaaS tooling or off-the-shelf tooling. It was very much, we would rather use open source and use a lot of, some amount of developer hours to build, implement, and support this. So we built a sort of in-house monitoring and alerting system, and we're having some troubles with adoption, but it was kind of working. We had, more steps in the pipeline to kind of increase adoption and make use of this tooling system easier for developers. And then something shifted in the environment, and the appetite in the business shifted much more to buy something off the shelf so we can focus on core competencies. So we did. We bought a tool. We sank the ship. Things we lost all of the visualization software and all of the related infrastructure that we had built for that. We lost all of the time that we had done doing associated training and documentation, and then just time that we had spent building and maintaining and planning for the next phase of the project that wasn't going to happen. But what we did do, and what we kept, was we ID'd champions for this new observability project. So we knew exactly who had struggled with the previous implementation and who would be like really gung-ho about this new tool. And sure enough, they turned out to really drive adoption. We kept template pipelines for tooling projects. We had not really been in the habit of treating our internal tools like normal software projects. And so we didn't have like the same level of building and testing pipelines that we would have for something delivered to customers. And this was the project that helped us kind of start shifting that. So we kept all of that. And then we kept our underlying data gathering tools, and we're able to pipe that data into our new tool when that came on board. So lost some things, kept some things. Doesn't have to all be technical either. This project took me a couple of years to get perspective on, but I think it's important to talk about, especially on the technical side. Sometimes we overlook the work that our branding and marketing peers do. So I was involved in a large website overhaul in a highly regulated environment. So this is higher ed. After about 2 years of working on this project and sinking what to me was an unfathomable amount of money, we still didn't have a homepage for this new website. And somebody came in and made the very difficult and politically unfavorable opinion to cut the contract completely. We scrapped, in my opinion, absolutely everything and started over. It took me a couple of years to realize what we had actually salvaged. So we had salvaged, we lost a lot of code, we lost a lot of time, we lost a lot of money, but we salvaged branding elements and personas, the web menu structure and the web copy. And if you've ever worked in a highly regulated environment, we kept all of the decisions that we had worked so hard to get approved by like the board of directors in terms of our content management system and our basic architecture. We did not have to go back to the board of directors because we were able to keep all of that. And so this project was able to move into a 2.0 iteration. We brought on a different contractor. We did some things a little bit differently. We were able to take the elements we saved and turn them into a functioning website in under 8 months. As a new team lead, I am very much hoping that I don't have to make a call on a multi-million-dollar project right away, but we get to practice these skills on small projects too. So this last one is a very teeny tiny one. This is knowledge-based consolidation. Internally raise your hand if you've ever been somewhere where you didn't know which tool you were supposed to look in for a particular answer. We had like Google Docs and Confluence and wikis and project readmes all over the place. And somebody had brought on an internal Stack Overflow because this is a tool developers are used to working with. And so now we had 5, and that was rough. And we made the decision to consolidate down to 1. That unique advantages each tool brought were overruled by the need to streamline where people were creating, storing, and finding information. And when this decision came down and was disseminated out, the developer who had initiated that Stack Overflow project was the very first one to raise his hand and say, yes, I absolutely agree. I will export all of those questions and answers that we've gathered so they can be put into our unified knowledge base. It was one of the best experiences that I've seen of somebody really being able to own that a project didn't go the way that they thought it was going to, and that there was no shame in kind of pivoting once it was clear that the path to value was around unification rather than finding specific knowledge tools for each particular team. All right, so after you've filled the lifeboat and you've figured out what you're going to keep from the project, the next step is to bury the wreck. This is it. This is a wreck. So people actually go scuba diving around shipwrecks, which I find fascinating. I have a fear of deep water, so I'll probably never do that. But it's one thing to make that like a key highlight in your vacation, and it's another thing if you had to scuba dive around a shipwreck to get to your office or to your desk every day, right? So we want to clear out as much of the wreckage as we possibly can because we're trying to clear our shipping lanes. So things that might mean create a reusable component library. If you've got bits of code from this project that you can keep, just make a separate library with just those reusable bits and then archive the code in the docs. You know, I'm a archivist by training, so I would encourage you to not just like delete them forever, but move them out of the way. You don't need to be logging into GitHub and seeing that repo from that project that got canceled. It doesn't feel good, and it's definitely not helping you move on to the next thing. And then as you can, clean up any and all debris from that project. So that's tickets in your ticketing system. You don't need those accidentally sneaking into your backlog. If you've got calendar invites for check-ins or whatever, clear those off, close out your Slack channels, whatever the digital debris is around this project, clear it out as fast as you possibly can. Move on to the next thing. So that's the work. And now the people. This is one of the most important things that we get to do. There's a lot of shame around ending projects. Our entire incentive structure is geared at getting code into production. And the math is complicated. And oftentimes, in order to get good code out into production, so many other things have to be cut to make that happen. It's not a reflection on individual people, and it can often feel like that. And I think we have to talk about it to change it. So two major identities might emerge on your individual team. Obviously, people are complex and they'll involve bits and pieces of both of these. But as general concepts, you have people who are motivated more by learning and people who are motivated more by shipping. For your learning people, call out the reusable components, highlight the problems that they solved, even if they couldn't solve everything. And very importantly, acknowledge the iceberg. For people who are motivated by learning new things, it is super, super important to know that it's not that they weren't smart enough or that they didn't learn fast enough or whatever that internal dialogue might be. If a business priority changed and sank your project, none of that was going to matter anyway. So be very clear about what changed. For your shipping folks, identify the tangible benefits of reuse. If a reusable code component saves 10 hours on another project, they are now an indirect contributor to that project, and they get to, you know, at least internally, like put that star on their chest. Highlight their achievements wherever you can. If you have a cheers channel or some way to like acknowledge them publicly and they're into public acknowledgement, continue to do that even if the project did not make it to production. And then consider rotating developers to shorter term projects. If you've ever been on a long project that didn't quite make it, it can be really demoralizing and drain those brain chemicals. And having a couple short-term wins can really refuel that tank. Last but not least, update your maps. If you sailed into something that you think you might be able to anticipate better next time, document that, share that out, make that part of your sort of ongoing assessment journey that happens in your next project. If you can give yourself a little bit more lead time before making those changes, it can sometimes make managing your people a little bit easier as well. So this is us. We talked about sunk cost fallacy. We talked about our role as team leads when talking to business and product and advocating to sync a project. We talked about examples of projects where we lost some components, but we salvaged some things. And then we talked about how we take care of our teams. My name, again, is Kristin Smith. This has been super helpful for me to kind of frame some thoughts, and I'm excited for the discussion to follow. And last but not least, it takes a whole heck of a lot of people to make a PowerPoint actually happen. So shout out to a whole wide world of photographers out there taking pictures of boats. Thanks.